He swam out with furious energy, but he could not swim away from the sticky little tentacle of fear that had just fastened itself around his heart.
What is going on, all you ghosts and ghouls? Thank you for tuning back into the Halloween Horror Pod. I've been excited to talk about this one for a good while now. I'm here with my good buddy Mike Hodge. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
AKA Van Vidal on the Halloween Horror Hour. I'm Discount Dracula. We're going to have more news about that show and updates for you at the end of the episode, but I think people are here to hear about Cape Fear. I have so much to get into to this. I barely knew this property at all until a couple months ago. I knew of it, but when they announced the Apple show, I decided to check out the movie from the 90s, and I just went down the rabbit hole of everything that's available, and I just began chomping at the bit to talk about this property. Mike, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Cape Fear, talking about it today.
Well, I had seen the 1962 movie and the 1991 movie, and of course that kind of dominates most of the cultural discussion because, I mean, between Scorsese and De Niro. But I also kind of had it mixed up with the another Robert Mitchum movie, Night of the Hunter, and but like I hadn't read the novel yet, which I think we both now have, and just getting into how this story has changed from 1957 to 2026, I think is a real snapshot of just how our culture has changed and just how what we view valuable in fiction and storytelling has changed. And I'm definitely eager to get into that with you.
I think that's a really great way to put it. And yeah, it's been technically 69 years, but in a few months it's around 70. So if I just refer to it as a 70-year-old story, bear with me. But this story really has evolved from, post-World War II until now. And I've been just fascinated with especially the, now in my opinion, underappreciated villain of Max Cady and how he has evolved through time and circumstance. And so we'll dive into it. I just want to say, as we start talking about the film adaptations, we're going to start with the book, but as we get into the film, I mean, we are just dealing with not even just behind the camera, but on camera, just a murderer's row of talent. And not just the Martin Scorsese and the Spielberg of it all, but as our leading performers throughout these decades of this story being told. We have Gregory Peck, Telly Savalas, Robert Mitchum, Nick Nolte, Joe Don Baker, Robert De Niro, Jessica Lange, Juliette Lewis, Javier Bardem, CCH Pounder, Patrick Wilson, Amy Adams, Ron Perlman, Juliette Lewis again, and I'm sure there's some that I'm forgetting. So I just, all the talent involved in telling the story is always such a delight to watch. And did you enjoy re-exploring these? I'd never seen the 62 movie or the 91 movie before I began this exploration. How do you feel about how our actors brought these characters to life before we get into the individual stories?
Well, I feel like a lot of times actors will say they like playing villains better than playing the hero because the villain's juicier. And Max Cady over time has just become the juiciest role in the entire show. But I mean, they've definitely tried to keep the lawyers on their toes. I don't know, just if we're going to start with the novel, I don't know if the novel would work the same way today, and I don't know that the 62 movie, which is largely based on the novel with a few changes.
Sure.
I don't know that it would work the same way today, just the way that lawyers were looked at in our society and the way that villains usually didn't have depth. Because if you look at Max Cady in the novel and the 62 movie, he's off screen most of the time. He's not actually doing very much stuff. And if you compare that to Javier Bardem's role in the Apple Plus TV show, he is front and center in just every episode.
Yeah, and
that's not a spoiler.
No, that's not a spoiler. And as far as regarding spoilers, and we're going to dive into the book here, as far as the book, the 62 movie, and the 91 movie. We're also going to cover the Simpsons special. All spoilers are pretty much on the table. When it comes to the show, we're going to go gentle, but there's going to be a couple things. There's a couple early, like twists or reveals, but they're not, they're not super major, but there's a couple things that will need to come up to talk about the evolution of Max that may be considered a spoiler. So if you haven't checked out the show, fair warning on that, but we're going to do our best not to ruin anything for you, and I'll give you a heads up before we get started. But let's kick things off with the book, The Executioners, now called Cape Fear, aka The Executioners. Published in 1957 by John D. MacDonald, it's described as a psychological thriller suspense novel about the lawyer Sam Bowden being stalked and tormented by the criminal Max Cady, who he had a hand in putting in prison. And that's kind of essentially our setup for every way this story is told. And the situation of our characters changes every single iteration that this is displayed. And in 1957, our Max Cady and Sam Bowden, the troubles as they were started when Sam Bowden, essentially our protagonist, walked in on Max Cady raping a woman in Australia while they were on a tour of duty in World War II. They were both longtime service members. I know Max had seen combat. I'm not sure if Sam had or not. I'm not sure how important that is.
I don't think Sam ever saw combat.
Okay, and that's fair. And I only bring that up because in the book, a lot more than some of the other ways this story has been told, you kind of get a picture of Max's family. You don't meet them necessarily, but you hear other people talk about them. And it sounds like he went from... Oh, and I should also state that they express that he's illiterate. He pretty much comes from what, would have been known then as like a backwater area.
Cady is in the novel, Cady's from West Virginia. He and his family, it comes out, they're just a rough family. I think
yes.
The dad's in jail, the brother's in jail or dead, but it is all off screen.
Yeah, it is all off screen, so to say, in the book. But you get the impression that he lived around abuse, both physical, probably neglected, probably substance abuse in the household. And then he goes from that, never gets an education, and goes from that into an active war zone in World War II. And now this is not to give, any quarter, so to say, to Max Cady. He is absolutely a villain. But I think at the time, it would have been, for a book coming out in 1957, I mean, the war would have been so fresh on people's minds, and to have a character that was shaped, by that, I think he would have come off as, I don't know if understandable is the right word, not for the assault that he commits, but for being a broken human being. What do you think about that?
I feel like the 57 novel has Max really as a one-dimensional character, and that dimension is pushing Sam Bowden, because the story, in my reading and thinking about the story is a parable of Sam Bowden in the novel is an upright, really too upright, naive in some ways about how much he should trust the law and how much the law is sacrosanct. and Gregory Peck does play that kind of character in the movie, but
yes,
they
much
him.
closer than the other adaptations as far as Bowden's love of the law. That's my voice of the audiobook.
They remove him from the from anything involving the law he's not even his lawyer in the book and the first movie. He's a guy that stopped him from doing the actual rape.
Yes, in the book and the movie, he's not actually his lawyer. No.
And so when they went to 91 and now 2026, they made Bowden the lawyer that actually was defending Max, not just the person, because he wasn't part of the defense at all in the book and the first movie. He was part of the prosecution. This guy is bad and I'm putting him away. And Max is just so mad at him for that. That's his whole motivation. But we don't get into Max much. He's I think in the book and the first movie, he might still be illiterate.
Oh, he is. No, in the book, he is illiterate, and I don't believe he becomes literate, which is a contrast to the '91 movie. But no, you're absolutely right there. The only thing that, because in this book, yes, he testifies against him because he caught him in the act of assault. I think the only reason that Katie focuses in on him instead of, like, say, the judge or anyone else on the jury is just because they served together and he had access and he could find out where he was and knew where he'd been and he knew him. But I can't really figure out why he became so focusedly obsessed with Sam and his family, other than he was jealous of jealous of everything that Sam had.
I can see that definitely, because there still is, but there was definitely a perceived class divide. But I feel like it's a good place to start with Katie being this, in 57 and 62, Katie being this just force of nature that is making Sam Bowden reevaluate his love of the legal system and his naivete about how it can protect him and his family.
Right.
And so Max is just there to push him, because his internal struggle is the real struggle of the book. And it pushes him away from his idealism and just makes him have to reevaluate everything. So Max is as much as he's been loved throughout the 91 and 2026 adaptations, Max is just there to push Bowden in the early versions.
Yes, absolutely agreed. And I can't express enough. We made a lot of jokes around the household. I think I texted you a few of these. Is that our narrator, Sam Bowden, in the book, boy, he loves the law, and he wants to let you know that he is in love with the law. And I've told my partner that I'm now in love with the law, and that I'm leaving her for the law, just like Sam Bowden would do. So yes, that is a bit heavy-handed in the story, but it works. It's a fun book. It's like a breezy 6-hour audiobook. It's not a hard commitment of a read. It's almost technically a short story. But I will say that Max, and this is a little tough because De Niro and Barnum both do pretty disgusting things. Well, I'm just remembering Robert Mitchum does something pretty disgusting to the family as well. But the kind of bullheaded Max Cady we get in the Executioner's book is like the most overtly violent toward the Bowden family. And I should mention, with the Bowden family, the makeup is different every time they tell it. In the book, it's the husband Sam, wife Carol, daughter Nancy, and then the sons Jamie and Bucky. And the sons pretty much disappear for a lot of the tellings of the story. But in the book, Max straight up shoots one of his sons with a rifle and then flips their car by unscrewing their tires. And he just he's barely even subtle near the end of that story. And how do you feel about Max's overt violence towards the Bowdens compared to the books and the film adaptations?
Well, yeah, the two boys are definitely dropped as soon as they go to the movies. I have this feeling that dealing with child actors that don't, I think they were able to get everything they needed out of the story from the daughter.
I agree. I think it would have detracted from that 62 movie.
But the idea that Max is trying to take his family away from him, that definitely goes back to the root of the book.
Yes, he wants to even things up. And that's the big thing. And I feel like the Apple show brings that back more than the others have. His express intent of wanting to make their lives even again. However, he sees that in his own delusion.
And so in the book, Max tries to kill his son while he's at summer camp, and the wind messes with the shot.
Yeah, the wind moves it away from his heart into his arm, something like that.
And taking off the lug nuts on one of the wheels so they have a wreck. Those are both, in my opinion, things that are realistic for a person who's illiterate and vengeful in the 50s to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you start getting into, and this is more of a preview, I'm not going to go into depth, but when you start getting into the 91 and the 2026 movies, Max Cady becomes much more competent and much more able to pull strings, especially in the 2026 version. He just becomes a Svengali. And so that it's a progression of that character. And in some ways it might be more realistic. I think that a lot of the changes that were done between 62 and 91 reflect a lot of things that we know about people, because even in the 62 movie, Mitchum was playing a pretty cardboard character that didn't have a lot of depth. So I
Yeah,
think that we got more in De Niro, and I do think that to its benefit, I think Bardem's character is basically the most developed character, even over the lawyers.
I would absolutely agree. I'm really excited to talk about Bardem's performance, and I think that if you're watching the show right now and you haven't revisited any of this, and you can start with the movie from '62 because that's 64 years old now. So you can start with that and just see how that changes, because even if Robert Mitchum's depiction of the villain Max Cady isn't as maybe what we would consider now, magnetizing or as gripping as a De Niro or especially Bardem's portrayal right now, there's still something about Max that was so infuriating that started in the book and that they carried well into the 62 version. Is you're just like, he's just like this lunkhead. He's out of prison. He wants to hurt my family. He's hanging around, but there's like nothing they can do. And he knows just enough to stay out of that area of trouble that can put him away, and that's what drives them insane. And he's always like, what did I do? I'm just standing here, counselor. And that's another thing we should bring up is in the book, he always calls him lieutenant, but going forward, it's counselor. What's the matter, counselor?
Yeah.
What are you looking at, counselor? And so I've been saying that around the house a lot lately, too, in preparation for this.
And and Bardem is usually calling Patrick Wilson's character prosecutor.
Oh, that's right.
And I think I can't remember what he calls Amy Adams' character, but it is usually something involving the law, like counselor.
Yeah.
But the one of the things about the book, they actually spend an entire chapter on the book going through Sam and Carol's courtship and romance, and they spend a lot of time on Sam and very little time on Max, and that has just so flipped by
I was
2026.
gonna say, yeah, because everyone's fascinated in what Sam's story is, or sorry, with what Max's story is. But you're right, Sam, or whatever, the Bowdens, as time will go on, remain more of a mystery than Max.
I know especially in the 91 film, they started bringing out, it's like, with every iteration, the lawyers get worse and Max gets better.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a generalization, but it's like, wow, this is a really boring lawyer. Well, what if this happens? Or what if this, they try and add depth to these lawyer characters that are just, the Sam Bowden in the book and the 62 movie is such a stand-up guy
who believes in the law.
Yeah. And so that is his character, and I guess especially by 91 that just becomes unbelievable, and the public's perception of the legal field in general has changed dramatically since 62. So it's just they try and keep the characters new and alive and fresh, and it just ends up, I think the Sam Bowden in the book would just be disgusted by Sam in the 91
so
movie.
I was going to say, I think
totally horrified by the 2026 Bowdens.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the 2026 Bowdens have their problems, but I think that the 91 Sam Bowden is probably the worst of them. And we will get to it, but I do want to wrap up a couple things here on the Executioners.
Okay.
So in the Apple show, though, we do find out more about Max's family. And so this is why I believe that Robert Mitchum's Max Cady, as much as I enjoyed that movie and his performance, is the thinnest representation of that character, is because even in the book, for this big bullheaded dummy that he is, we still learn not only about Sam and Carol's backstory, but we learn about Max's family, and not very much, like I said, but not just the parents he grew up with, but that when he went away, he lost a wife who left him.
And a child.
Yep, and then his son died while he was incarcerated. And that really set him off. And I think that adds a level of depth to Max that I wasn't expecting from this book. And, again, not to give him sympathy, but, you have the awful upbringing, the 7 years of active combat in World War II, go to prison, lose your son. You have no education. I mean, this dude was just like built to fail and destroy. And I like that about Max, as far as writing for a villain. Like, I don't want to, I don't like him. I don't want to hang out with him.
One of the things that I noticed by going more into Max in the 26 show, they actually brought back, as Max tells these stories, and whether they're true or whether they're not true, we don't know. But you get the impression that he's describing what he's going to do to the lawyer through these stories. And so that the story of in the 62 movie and in the book, Max tells this little story about what he did to his ex-wife after he got out of jail. And I think they brought that story back, but changed it for the 26 show. But and we can talk about exactly how they might have changed it later. But that story specifically, with respect to some characters, and I don't want to get too much into it because of the spoiler land, but that story really jumped out at me as something they brought forward that the especially the 91 movie just skipped.
Oh, I hear exactly what you mean, and I made a little list here, and I'm sure I'm missing some. So there were some reoccurring themes that seem to happen in every iteration of this story, but it's always a little bit different. And I'm going to go through a couple of these. There's always a woman who, if not defends Max, Max wrongs, and she refuses to speak out against him. That's pretty much universal. I don't think there's one time that hasn't happened. It's a little different in the Apple show, but we'll get there. It's the opening of the episode. It's not too bad of a spoiler. In the book, it's Max's wife, because he found his wife and assaulted her after he was released, and she won't talk because she's too scared. And that'll be a continual theme. Max always kills an animal. It's 3 out of 4 times it's the family dog. In the Apple show, it's a family of skunks. But the worst depiction of that family's dog's murder is definitely the book. That was visceral.
Yeah.
And in the book, they bring up a problematic son in Bucky. We mentioned the sons disappear, but in the new show, we have Zach, who seems to be filling in the role of what we were promised 70 years ago with Bucky, and that Sam always tries to set up an illegal assault or sabotage against Max that backfires and ruins Sam's life. Does that sound about right? Oh, and there's always a houseboat.
Well, in the book, when they set up the people to beat up Max, Max actually does beat them up, and he does that again in 62
Right.
and 91. But in the book, there's no connection back to Sam. It's, in fact, Max punches one of the police that come to break it up, and he gets 30 days in jail.
Right, and then he knows Sam was behind it, and then he goes and shoots his son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in the 62 and 91 movies, they actually, and I thought it was actually kind of clunky the way it was in the 91 movie, but in the 62 and 91 movies, they basically have it get back to Max in a way that he can actually bring up kind of ethical charges against Sam.
Yeah, in 91, they do that for sure. Again, I don't want to spoil anything. The Max, well, you know what? We'll get to Javier Bardem later. Let's not jump the gun here. So
just talking about the 91, 62 and book, that scene, that because there's and this is something that happens in all 3 of them too, is at a certain point they realize they've got to deal with Max, and they set
the
him
law
up.
Can't do anything, and it's up to them to make this stop.
And so in the book, they actually set him up at their house. There is no houseboat. There is no Cape Fear River,
right?
Which is an actual place in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, well they do go down to like a lake at some point, but it has nothing to do with the finale. But then for some reason after that, there always has to be a big confrontation on a houseboat. It just became the rule afterwards.
Well, I mean, Cape Fear. Somebody who was adapting the book into the movie was just like, oh man, I used to go to this place in North Carolina, Cape Fear. We got to use that. Oh, Cape Fear. How can we not use that? And so that's taken over. I was talking with my wife about this the other day.
I forgot to look up why they named it that. It's barely a part of the story.
In the original Alien script that Dan O'Bannon wrote, there is no android. That was something that was added by Ridley Scott saying, oh, we need a subplot. And that android has just it's an integral part of the entire Alien universe. And to a certain extent, that's how I see the addition of Cape Fear and the Cape Fear River into the story of the
Yeah.
executioners. It has just become a vital part of telling the story, and usually in the 62 and 91 films, it's a part of the Bowden's life where they take their boat, but it flips in the 2026 show, and that's where uh, Katie's family is. And
Oh,
so it's
you're right. I hadn't even considered that. That's a great point.
Yeah, so that it's that thing that's been added in that just kind of takes over, but it's hard to beat the words Cape Fear as a title over the Executioners. It's
Oh,
just like,
absolutely. And it probably sells better to marketers back then, especially. So before we wrap up on the book, The Executioners, get into the 62 movie, which I think we've talked about a lot, but there's a couple points we can circle back on. I do want to talk about the resolution of Sam and Max in each of these. And I should say that we're recording this when this episode drops. It is going to be the evening or the day that the final episode of the Cape Fear miniseries drops. So we don't know how the show ends as we're recording this. We've seen 9 out of 10. Very much looking forward to it. But
and we can speculate a little.
yeah, of course. In The Executioner's book, 1957, Sam ends up killing Max. There's a scene where he uses his family as bait, which is a reoccurring thing. And a man named Kursick is killed. Kursick dies in pretty much all of these. At least, again, the ones that I promised I'd spoil. He's, in this book, an old friend of Sam's. In the 91 version, he's just a guy that Sam hires. In this one, Sam fires a wild bullet at a running away Max and apparently ruptures an artery in his arm, killing Max for good and putting an end to their terror. Now, what do you think we learned from that ending? Like, what's the takeaway there?
It's kind of interesting because in the book, Sam wants to do the right thing, and he actually takes his family out for shooting practice. They have land outside of town.
Yeah,
and he
that's
takes
right.
His family out
That's
for
right.
shooting practice, and so all of his family can shoot guns, but it's not like he's ever been combat trained, and so he's like hiding in a detached garage that the kids use as a playhouse, waiting for a signal from his wife, and I think he actually ends up fumbling almost every bit of his confrontation with Max.
Yeah, but his intention was there, but he does screw it up pretty bad.
And it's only shooting wildly at a Max that's running away that ends up accidentally hitting him. So it's like as a villain, or the villain dragging Sam down to his level to protect his family, Sam is not a very good at it. And really it outside of the novel was nearly ending and we don't want this to go on any longer, Max could have gotten away very easily in the way the book has it play out.
Sure, but I kind of like the idea. I didn't even think about this till you just said that about Sam, is that maybe instead of trying to control everything and finding reason, that when he started firing wildly, he was essentially embracing chaos and meeting Max at his level, and that was the secret to stopping him. And I hadn't even considered that.
The balance between order and chaos, and Max definitely represents chaos, and Sam is order, and just the idea that Max has to pull Sam down, and I guess the firing blindly is Sam finally giving himself over to the dark side, if you will, and it becomes the Force guides his bullet and does end Max. But it's not the kind of confrontation you get in the 62 movie or the 91 movie, or the confrontation that I'm expecting.
Well, the 91 movie has a little something similar, but not the same.
Yeah, well.
But I did want to say, you brought up that he taught his family. So in the book, he teaches his family. He takes them out for target practice. He tells them about Max. He says, "There's this guy who's coming around. I want to make sure you're safe." And then that continues. The reason I don't respect Nick Nolte's character is because he doesn't do this for his family, but we'll get there. That is The Executioners, written by John D. MacDonald in 1957. We have so much more to get to. Oh, and I did want to say, so in my mind, I was casting Max Cady for the book, and I'm thinking like peak early 80s Vincent D'Onofrio is my Max Cady's from The Executioners. Do you have anyone in mind to cast as Max Cady from that book?
It's so hard to. I mean, I really like the way Robert Mitchum played the Max Cady in the '62 movie, and
Oh
so
yeah,
that's a lot of what's going on in my head when because I didn't read the book first.
right.
Uh, so I still kind of see Mitchum but I really see Mitchum more from like Night of the Hunter. At first, I thought that was what we were going to talk about because of the villain that he plays, and he played in that villain. It's like it was in like 57 or 58 when Night of the Hunter came out, and so he had this iconic uh, released convict villain going already. And that's where I think later on we can talk about the tattoos, but that's the Mitchum character that has love tattooed on one set of fingers and hate on the other set of fingers. And it's and so the Mitchumness of the character kind of gets melded into the 91 movie and the 2026. But it's just that's always been kind of who I see as Max.
Oh, absolutely. So I had my first experience of this, besides The Simpsons and knowing about it, was the '91 movie. So that was my baseline, and then Mitchum was so different. And then I read the book, but in the book, it's just the way they describe him just didn't really fit Mitchum in my head. They kind of describe like this broad-shouldered, in my head, like bald, kind of like bruiser looking kind of guy. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Either way, I always saw Vincent D'Onofrio while that book was going on in my head.
Oh no, I could definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it kind of like was he in Full Metal Jacket?
Yes, he was. Yeah, Gomer Pyle.
Yeah, that character the character in Full Metal Jacket definitely could be a successor to the Max.
Well, and I was actually
character.
thinking about his performance as Kingpin in the recent run of Daredevil as well. I mean,
Oh,
he's older as well, but if you think about the way he performs Kingpin, and you mix it with his performance in Full Metal Jacket, shave his head, and put him back in the '80s, I think you got your Max Cady from The Executioners, in my mind. But regardless, I did want to talk about Night of the Hunter because when we're moving into Cape Fear, 1962, directed by J. Lee Thompson, starring Robert Mitchum as Max Cady and Gregory Peck as Sam Bowden. So after I watched this movie, I went down a deep rabbit hole of watching, films of that era of the 50s and 60s, and we watched Key Largo. It was fantastic, and one on my list was Night of the Hunter. I have not gotten to it yet. I really need to see it, and I'm sorry to let you down that I haven't.
well, the other film that I think it came out the same year as Cape Fear, but the iconic Gregory Peck role is as Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, the upstanding lawyer who takes on the system kind of, he's it's like, Gregory Peck really had this idealistic lawyer thing going in the 60s.
Right.
And so it's between To Kill a Mockingbird and Cape Fear, and then on the other side of the coin you have Night of the Hunter and Cape Fear, and it's just this ultimate meeting of order and chaos.
When I originally posted on one of my movie groups that I had seen Cape Fear, the first recommendation people were making was Night of the Hunter, so I am sleeping on it hard. So thank you.
Oh yeah, it's an interesting story in and of itself, separate from all of this, but it hasn't had the traction over time as the Cape Fear story. So it's an interesting thing as to what gets remade and remade and remade, and what doesn't out of movies. Both movies are considered classics, so it's just kind of interesting.
Absolutely. Before we get into the plot specifics, I should mention something very important, and that is the iconic Cape Fear theme. From this day forward, when I hear those four notes, I'm going to think about this time in my life and look back with genuine fondness. That was created by Bernard Herrmann for the 1962 Cape Fear movie. And, man, I didn't know how much I'd love that theme. I'd heard those notes before, but that just gets right down to the bones, don't it?
Well, they reused the theme actually, I think, in the '91 and definitely in the 2026 movie.
Oh, yeah, no,
They're a little
that's
different.
forever.
They change it.
Oh, yes.
But the thing is, I also think like it's so similar to what I guess what John Williams did for the Jaws theme.
I was thinking Jaws. That was my very first thought.
And it's just that whole orchestral. It just really it hits. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that the Cape Fear music has definitely not just affected the later versions of the thing, but I think it actually had some effect on people that did scoring later on too. I think it's definitely more iconic than just it's a 1962 movie. Who cares?
Right.
But no, I liked that theme specifically, but and as melodramatic music goes, and there's a lot of it in the 60s, that's actually a pretty good use of it.
Absolutely agree. So, as we move into this story, we should notice that this is when everyone but Sam and Max start to change. I'm not entirely sure why these decisions are made every time, but the wife, Carol, is now named Peggy, and the daughter is still Nancy. And in this one, I mentioned in every iteration of this story, there's some woman who gets wronged by Max. Pretty much in the timeline, we're experiencing the story, but refuses to speak against him. And this time, it's a woman named Taylor, who, as far as I know, isn't connected to anyone else in the story. Things like that will change. But she won't speak against Katie out of fear of public humiliation. And this story was set in 1962. And I will say that this movie makes some pretty bold decisions as far as things to put on the big screen, especially with these names behind it in 1962.
No, I think that it helps establish on screen just how brutal Max is, and the idea that he's kind of a loose cannon, and that he will he will abuse. And this is something that I think happened in the book, and they carry it forward into the 62 movies. When Max is abusing his ex-wife, he has her write love letters to him that are backdated, so that basically, if she tries to say, "Oh, he abused me," then as a man with these love letters, the law is going to be on his side and ignore her and just embarrass her. That same kind of embarrassment is what keeps the woman that he abuses in the 62 movie from testifying.
And that's a consistent theme that we'll see throughout this, is that the women don't speak against what Katie does to them because of how our system does them dirty, essentially, when, for the victims of cases like this. And these iterations always make that statement, and I appreciate them for that.
These are the seeds of the manipulation that they grab onto it and really expand it in 91 and expand it even further in the 2026 version. But these are the seeds of Katie being a manipulative guy and knowing just enough about the system to make sure that he knows what he's doing, I guess, is in that respect. I don't, especially the book, so many things happen with Max off screen, or just they mention that they're happening, but they're not scenes that you actually play through in the book or even in the 62 movie. But
I mean, speaking of Jaws, I mean, it's like he's always under the surface, and you never know when he's going to come out and strike. And sometimes he could have already made a strike, and you're not going to find out until you've lost too much blood to even realize it's happened.
But the 62 is where you definitely start getting the deterioration of the lawyer as a noble character, because Gregory Peck does have a pretty noble character, but he's not quite as noble as Sam in the book.
Yeah, I feel like from 1957 to 2026, you see a gradient of like true order go down and then kind of plateau.
Well, it's like if the book and the first movie are kind of these parables of order versus chaos, by 91 and 2026, there's so much chaos with the lawyers. There's very little order anywhere in the stories, and it makes for a better, more soapy story, but from the viewpoint of viewers in the 90s and the 2020s. But it's just the parable between order and chaos breaks down because the lawyers keep getting worse and worse.
Right. Well, speaking of bad lawyers, I had mentioned before that it's a consistent thing that Sam tries to have Max assaulted. And in the 1962 movie, and it always goes bad for him. In the book, he tries, it essentially fails. When Max comes back from it, he shoots his son. In this movie, Sam tries it, it fails, and what happens instead is that Max gets his law license revoked. And I think that's where we start to see the smarter, more insidious Max that, builds up to what we're getting with Javier Bardem's performance. And I think that that's a smarter move to destroy. I mean, of course, it's devastating to lose a kid, but, then you're going to go to jail and you have to hide the rest of your life. I think it's a much smarter move to destroy Sam forever, to strip his career as like step one in his revenge. And I think that is a deeper sense of malice that we could get from Max, or a deeper insidiousness that we could pick up from his character doing something like that.
And when I was thinking about the change, because what this does is it sets up a hearing that's out of town. And I got the impression that the way that they set up Max at the end in the book seems kind of kludgy. And the way that they set him up to be out of town, or fake that he's out of town, to set up Max in the 62 movie involves this ethical hearing for hiring someone to go beat up Max as a lawyer. And so I almost think they weren't really thinking about Max in the production of the 62 movie. I don't think they were thinking about, ooh, this be Max really getting him. I think it was just like, oh, this is a better excuse for him to fake leaving town to set up Max.
Yeah.
Just from a story viewpoint, I'm thinking that they were probably looking for something that looked a little better than the way it's handled in the book. But it definitely sets up another aspect. You
mean him sleeping pitch dark in a 3-story barn with a loaded handgun next to him wasn't a good setup in the book?
Well, no, I think it has something that they it's like they take his wife takes him somewhere, like he's going to be out of town, but then he hides under some blankets in the back of their station wagon on the road back.
Right. Yeah.
And they park the car, and it's on the second floor of that garage/play area that he's going to be hiding out. And so that I feel like that doing that for the movie didn't have as much gravitas. The idea that, oh, you're in trouble and you better deal with this. And so it's like they have Mitchum following him to the airport. And I don't know, does Mitchum go up to the counter and like BS his way into knowledge? I think he does, actually.
I think so. That's another thing that's great about Max is, and I think that Robert Mitchum does that well, and they only evolve it from there, is that, as big of a villain as we know he is as the reader, when you meet him for the first time and he's trying to charm you, he's a charmer. Man, like, I feel like if Max came up to me at that counter, especially Javier Bardem's, I'd be like, you have a fantastic day, sir. Great to meet you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it played better in the film to have him leave town because he has to leave town, and then manipulate that into a trap for Max.
Yeah.
In the 62 movie than it was handled in the book. And of course, once you open that Pandora's box, and I almost feel it's kind of like interesting. I almost feel like the Max Cady we get in the book is like the first time you see Darth Vader. And by the time the 2026 series is over, you're going to see Darth Vader again, but you'll have had to watch the first 3 Star Wars movies with Anakin slow decline to get there. Because it's not, I'm not saying that the Apple series starts off with Max being a noble person or anything, but it's just the amount of character development that they're devoting to this villain is just like huge compared to what he got in the book and the 62 movie.
Oh, absolutely. And I think he's carrying it so well. Speaking of that big finale, this is where we get the trend of the houseboat. That undeniable in the 62 movie that the finale does occur on the houseboat. And I hope this doesn't come off as redundant because it is a black and white movie. I was really impressed with the way that they played with light and shadow during that whole... I mean, that movie does a lot of great stuff with that, but that whole final sequence on that houseboat, I thought was so haunting with the way they played with those shadows. And I just recommend everyone check it out. It was so good, and I could have easily missed it had I not done this exploration.
Well, in the 60s, you have decades of black and white cinematography. They knew what to do with light. They were still figuring it out for color. Because, color had been around
that makes sense.
But just the whole idea of the cameras for black and white were so much smaller, and you could really go on location. And just the whole idea of they had just so much more of a playbook to tap into for black and white cinematography. The Academy Awards actually gave separate cinematography awards for black and white and color cinematography for years. and
How
eventually they
fascinating.
just they merged them eventually. But it's just that the idea that yeah, they knew what they were doing with that light, and they did a great job. And
Right.
obviously, we didn't go through the '90s version of like say Cape Fear Kids or anything, but but yeah, no, the cinematography on Cape Fear in '62 was great.
What I do want to say that I thought was pretty bold of a move for 1962, and I don't know if you'd agree with me on this or not, but one thing that Robert Mitchum's Max does is they don't blatantly say it, but they say it, is that he rapes Sam's wife in the lead up
He
to
gets
the
very
finale.
close. I think he gets very close. I don't think I think that there would be. He definitely assaults her, and
And
she has
maybe
a
gets
ripped
very
bodice.
close to that.
But I
Okay.
don't, I don't,
It's kind of
I don't think
unclear.
there's any actual rape. I think it's just a an assault
Well,
by
then
the
he
time
implies
Steve
that
is
he like jumps out of the room and implies that he's going to do that to his daughter, who he
Oh,
then begins to chase.
yeah. No, he definitely
He's a
wants
bad
to hurt.
guy.
This is the another thing that about 62 versus 2026, raping the mother or raping his wife and daughter is seen as punishment for Sam.
Or as
This is
he
all
sees it,
about
like
punishment.
equalization and punishment. It's
Yeah,
so
you'll
creepy.
you'll lose you'll lose your wife, you'll lose your law license, you'll lose everything. And they definitely carry that forward in 91 and 2026, but
Yes.
it's all aimed at messing with the Sam Bowden character in 62.
Let's talk resolution at the end of the 62 movie. Sam does shoot Max, but he does not kill him. Instead, he gets him arrested and he, quote, puts him away forever because just a brutal Gregory Peck I just did. But because he
Yeah.
sees that as you're like, yeah, it was. He sees that as the ultimate punishment for Max is to go back to the one place he could never imagine going to again. Yada, yada, yada. Do you prefer it when Sam lets him live or when he kills him?
The problem with letting him live is that he doesn't go away.
And I feel like he's just going to kill
And
more people in prison, but the people he ends up like
yeah,
killing in these things would have killed somebody else anyway, so it's tough to say.
but I could see whereas they didn't want to push Peck's character as far as the book pushes Sam Bowden, because, and even though it's only an accidental death in the book, the idea that he's shooting blindly at a guy that's running away from him is basically, to a certain extent, it is the defeat of Sam that he even did that. That he the guy's running away. He could have just let him run away, but he knew that he would come back. So he had to keep shooting at him blindly and hope to hit him. Whereas in the movie they didn't have him kill him, and he does get to go back. So the law is actually preserved in the '62 movie. In the book, though, I one last thing about the book. At the very end, after they've dealt with Bowden, there's this like denouement where Sam and it's Carol in the book, right?
It's
They're talking
Carol in
about
the
having
book,
another.
yes.
They're talking about having another kid. They're like, oh, we just survived this horrible thing. Let's have kids. Let's have more kids. I think, I think a kid is what I want. That's I think what his wife basically. That'll help ease my pain. Give me more kids. And I don't know that they didn't bring that into the '62 movie at all.
No, I forgot about that. That they said we should get more kids. Well, I think that's a wrap on the 1962 movie. Let's move into the film from 1991, which for a lot of people is kind of the reason for the season. I mean, the book and the original movie with the cast behind it, they were successful, but it was just a time and place and the way marketing and technology, television, ad campaigns, spoofs, and everything work that this movie became why we know the name Cape Fear these days, in my opinion, and that's the 1991 version directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Robert De Niro as Max Cady, Nick Nolte as Sam Bowden, Juliette Lewis as Danny instead of Nancy, and Jessica Lange as Lee instead of Carol/Peggy. Again, don't know why the names need to be changed, yada, yada, yada. How do we feel about the 91 movie?
I feel like it's not. I don't think that your average Scorsese fan knows just what a big film geek Scorsese is. I think people know that like Tarantino's a big film geek,
Yeah.
but like, and Nolan, he's a film geek. But you go all the way back, and Scorsese is this huge film geek, and so the idea that he would have this this place in his heart and mind for the 62 Cape Fear and say, okay, I can do something with this. And he really Scorsese's it up. I mean, and bringing in De Niro, who is just, again, people that are much younger, they may know Taxi Driver, but it's just the whole idea that De Niro is like bringing the A gamest A game to the screen, and Nick Nolte and Jessica Lange. And Juliette Lewis was really young in that, but she's definitely gone on to have some very interesting roles, things like Natural Born Killer and whatnot. But it's just the cast and what Scorsese brings together into this story, really updating it. It becomes probably the most iconic. And when we're talking about things like The Simpsons or Rick and Morty or anything
Right.
that's a parody of it later on, they're always parodying the '91 movie.
Absolutely. That's what I was thinking too. And don't worry, dear listener, The Simpsons is coming up after this. But I got to say, I still have trouble wrapping my head around that it's a Scorsese movie. It just doesn't feel like one. It's a perfectly fine movie, just doesn't feel like a Scorsese one.
Well, he has a little bit of depth. He's actually done a musical, I think, New York, New York.
Oh,
And
well, fair enough. So in this one, just like in the book, Max gets out of a 14-year sentence, or he serves 14 years. There's, they all differ on what the max sentence was. That doesn't really matter. So in the book, he gets 14 years. In the 62 movie, it's 8 years. Weird change. Maybe it's because of historical context and they wanted to stay away from that. In the 91 movie, it's 14 years again. And this time it's again rape and battery. And we should say that it's really obvious in all of these that we've covered so far that Max did it. Max is guilty. Like, there's no discussion to that. Max is angry about the way he wasn't allowed off the hook through the technicalities he felt he deserved. Do you think I'm wrong in saying that?
I think that's definitely Max does not take responsibility for his actions in the novel in the 62. The twist with Nolte's lawyer's activity, though, it starts giving Max more moral justification for being outraged. By 2026, I think the lawyers have messed with him enough that you're almost rooting for Max to mess with their lives. But it's just in 1991, Nick Nolte actually does something, and we don't have to talk about it right this second, but he actually does something that Max finds out about in his defense. And I think that gives Max much more justification for being angry. Not psychotically angry like he is.
I'm
but
excited
still
to talk.
angry.
I don't think anyone's more justified, or at least Sells being more justified than Javier Bardem's. But in talking about De Niro's, I think he's a little more petulant because, and this goes back to what I was saying, how. And we're going to talk about the woman that Max assaults in this one who doesn't talk, which is just brutal. Before then, Max's justification in the 91 movie, this is De Niro's depiction of Max Cady, is that he's upset with Sam Bowden, his public defender in this novel. So in the other two, he was just a guy testifying, Sam was, and then he later became an attorney. In this one, he was actively Max's public defender. And he was upset because Sam didn't tell the jury that the assault victim was, quote, promiscuous. Like, essentially, she had it coming. And I mentioned that these women don't talk about what Max did because of, like, shame or embarrassment or fear of that. And De Niro in this movie, De Niro's character in this movie is, like, so upset that he couldn't utilize that public's perception as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And I just think that just adds to his disgustingness.
The idea that his lawyer would withhold evidence, even if it was just circumstantial and goes against the character of the witness, you're not supposed to withhold that kind of evidence. So he's like, no, I didn't want him to get off on this, or because the woman that he raped was also promiscuous. And it's like, it almost, at least in this version, it almost sounds like he has a noble reason for messing with Max. But Max has become a much more character of agency in the 91 film. He starts off as illiterate, which is why the lawyer feels he can do this. But in prison, he learns how to read. He learns about the law. He learns about his case and what happened. So he knows a lot more and is a much more capable character than Katie from the book or the 62 movie.
Yeah, in the book, he's just pretty much illiterate. He knows combat, and that's like about it. And then in the the first movie, we don't really know much about him. He's just kind of creepy, and we don't really get into his education or background. But in this one, we learn that he is determined, that he was illiterate but became a determined, learned man to be a big old smartass, revenge-seeking monster.
Well, something that we haven't mentioned, but it does play a role in facilitating Max's vengeance or perceived vengeance. In the novel, the 62 and the 91, there's a settlement from a family farm sale. I guess other relatives have died, and so he gets money. So he has enough money, and it's like, I think it's like $5,000 in the book. Maybe it's up to $15,000.
Oh yeah,
in
yeah.
the
He's
62
always
movie.
he ends up being financially independent, and I don't think you ever get a straight answer on any of the iterations exactly where it's all coming from. But it all seems legit enough that it never gets tested, and it never becomes a plot point against Max.
But the way they manipulate that in this 2026 series, which we'll get into, it just blows that amount that he gets out of the water. It is huge, and
Yeah.
the reason that he gets it though is also plays into other elements of the story that they've changed. But it seems each of these changes seems reasonable. But the idea that Max actually is financially set up well enough that he's not like, he's an ex-con. Where the hell did he get all this money? Well, they actually explain it. You know,
Right.
it's not out of it's not something you have to worry about when you're watching the movie, because he's not rich in the 62 or 91 movies, but he has enough money to do what he's doing.
Yeah, he has enough money to, like find a rifle, a place to sleep, 2 hots and a cot, and wait to do what he needs to do. And he knows how to do that. He's much more outdoorsy and resourceful, and much more rich and insidious as time moves on.
But in the 91 movie, he also transitions into someone who's, quoting Nietzsche, quoting other philosophers, and bringing out stories of the Bible, and really there's a religious element, and it plays with Javier Bardem's character quite a lot, but there's a religious element of God's righteous vengeance that De Niro's character brings, or De Niro brings to the character and the 1991 film, that's just not in the 62 or the 57.
You know what's funny? So since we're talking about this, there's a point, and this is going to continue into the Apple show, and again, I promised light spoilers here, but he gets inappropriate with the children, and I don't mean kind of physically, I guess physically, but more so he inserts himself into their life. And in the 91 movie, I think you made a really good point where he starts quoting things like Nietzsche and all these things, and my first thought was, man, if I was a easily manipulated teenage girl, that would really impress me. And guess who he goes for is the easily manipulated teenage girl in Danny, played by Juliette Lewis in the 91 movie. And boy, oh boy, that scene in the school is creepy between those two. And yeah, and but he sells it, and then he goes on as a character to get closer and closer with the family in Javier Bardem's depiction of the character. And then it's been 35 years, so in another 35 years, imagine how close they're going to be. They're going to be living together, man. They're going to be sleeping in the same bed.
Well, in the 26 show, it gets close.
It really does.
But I think in the 57 novel and the 62 movie, there's a little bit of leering that Katie does at the daughter. But that's about it. And that, of course,
Mitchum does chase her down at the end of the movie in 62.
Well, yeah, no, he definitely threatens her.
Yeah.
But but they don't really have a lot of interaction. And the daughter in the 62 movie she has her head on her shoulders. And really, it's one of the younger boys in the novel that has issues. And so they kind of merge the issues, because in the 91 movie, her character had been suspended for smoking pot and she was just kind of having issues. So she was vulnerable. They made her a vulnerable character so that when Katie comes in and starts, being, I think he gives her a book, and the way that Katie interacts with her is much more sinister and in your face. And I could definitely see where Scorsese wanted to show that a lot more than was shown in the 62 books, because that then will affect Nick Nolte's Sam Bowden in a way, oh, you are threatening my family directly. And yeah, so it's a different way of telling the story that I could definitely see Scorsese wanting to do, and definitely De Niro and Juliette Lewis being right on board with doing it that way.
Yeah, and just before I forget, another reoccurring theme here is the death of an animal. Their dog gets poisoned again. They love killing dogs in these things, and they can't. It's one of those super infuriating things where, like, Max did it, but he's just like, "Oh, your dog. I'm so sorry to hear about that. Like, what are you looking at me for? I didn't do anything. I'm just sweet little old Max." Like, and he's so good at doing that, and it's so infuriating.
Well, I think in the 62 movie and the 91 movie, Max basically describes exactly what he does to the dog.
Yeah.
As, oh, it's so sad that somebody would come and do this and this and this and this and this to your dog. It's so sad that would happen.
I forgot that.
That's terrible that somebody would do all of that to your. It's like you did that to the dog. He's just describing exactly what he did.
You just there's so many times you feel like Sam's need to just reach out and grab his throat, but you know that's not going to go anywhere well. And
no,
and sometimes that happens. They make pain try to happen on Max, and it always backfires.
Now there is a death of animals in the 26, and we can wait and talk about that later.
We will.
I think it has different implications in the story.
I do too. I
than
think
the
it's
killing of the dog.
Yeah, no, I think I got some thoughts on that. We'll get there. We'll get there. I do want to bring up in this one, the woman that Max assaults, who doesn't say anything because that's going to keep happening, and now we barely even talked about what a crappy Sam Bowden. Now, okay, Nick Nolte plays this. Nick Nolte plays this character great. This is not a bad performance. This is not even a poorly written character. But
no,
this
great,
Sam Bowden sucks.
Oh man, he does.
Yeah,
he does.
And so I just wanted to say that the woman that Max hurts is Sam Bowden's mistress. Now, let's use that as a baseline. Please give me your thoughts on this Sam Bowden.
Are they sleeping together or about to sleep together? I can't remember if they were, because I know that
I always got the impression they'd already done it, but Rainey disagrees, so I think it's up to interpretation.
Because I know that he has a past of cheating on his wife.
Oh, okay, well, great. At least there's that.
I think he's trying to be better, but he still has the kind of relationship he probably shouldn't have. And they do bring that forward. A lot of the crappiness of the 91 Sam Bowden goes right into the husband ex-prosecutor in the 2026. But and they have plenty saved up for Amy Adams' character too, let me tell you.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, he becomes such a heel. But I think it ends up.
Yeah, at the end, you just root for Jessica Lange as the wife to just take the kids and get out of that situation. At the end of the day, that's the real victory.
I think the idea, though, that they needed to create a more complex character of Sam so that when the family comes together to defeat Bowden, that's something that draws them all together. Defeat Katie, because that's what draws them together. That's what gets them over the hump of his previous indiscretions. And so I think at the end of the movie, they end up being, they shift into narration from Juliette Lewis right at the end. And so I think they still end up being kind of a damaged family, but they don't break apart.
Right. Unlike the houseboat, which does. Let's get into the conclusion. Well, thanks for setting me up for that. Allie friggin' hoop. Yeah. You're like, okay. At the end, they're on the houseboat. Let's talk resolution between Sam and Max in this iteration. A knockout, drag-out fight. There's a big set piece on a rolling river down with the houseboat, and the storms are kicking, and pieces are falling apart. Eventually, there's this great part where De Niro is beating the crap out of Sam, and he's pretending to be a prosecutor, and he's like, "Well, counselor, I sentence you to the ninth circle of hell," something like that. And, the storms are raging, and eventually, Sam gets the upper hand, cracks Max over the head with a rock, ties his hand to the sinking houseboat, and then they pretty much go into the sinking deep as the ship falls apart with Max tied to it, us smiling all the way down. And that's how we resolve that one.
I think that it's like Cape Fear, Cape Fear River in North Carolina, becomes the name of the movie, but it's just any place. It's not in the 62 movie, it's not its own character. And so when they're fighting at the end, they're not just fighting, you know, Katie and Bowden. No, they're fighting Katie, Bowden, and the river's trying to kill them both. And it's a third person in that fight that and Scorsese uses that both to turn the tables on Katie, but also to deny a few quicker endings to the fight for Sam. And it's just, the houseboat itself just gets so torn apart, and he doesn't shoot him in the end. And I think actually the way that it's set up, he could have saved him. He lets him drown.
Yes, he does. And I think that's a nice callback to the ending of the first book, essentially, but not quite as
intentional.
Intentional, yeah. And then I did want to say, I forgot to mention that we also have another appearance of Kersik. He is hired this time. He's not a previous friend of Sam's. He is killed by Max, who's wearing the outfit of the housemaid that he killed right before he kills Kersik. So that is a good look for De Niro.
Well, this is Joe Don Baker playing Kersik in the 91 movie.
Oh, my God. I also forgot to mention that Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck are in this movie as well. I can't believe I almost forgot to say that.
Right. No, when you have the lawyer that's going to bring ethics charges up on Nick Nolte's Sam Bowden on behalf of Max Cady, that lawyer is Gregory Peck.
Yeah.
And,
Lee, I had it. Whatever. Yeah. Gregory Peck is there.
I can't remember what role Mitchum plays, but
he plays Lieutenant Eggert. He was just one of the cops. I can't quite remember his face, but I know his name.
But yeah, they bring back these. It's definitely a series of iconic callbacks, bringing them in, and I'm sure that Peck and Mitchum just ate it up, getting to come back to the world of Cape Fear and getting a paycheck.
Yeah, that must have been exciting.
But and obviously they couldn't bring either one of them back for the 2026 because they had both passed away. But and they do bring back Juliette Lewis into this next one in a very, very, very different role.
Very much so. And I do want to say that to set Max up for this one, they do once again have Sam pretend he's leaving town to get him to come onto the houseboat. And I want to just keep that in your mind while we discuss our speculations on what's going to happen here going forward.
But for the ethics charge, earlier on, one of the guys I think that Sam Bowden hires blabs, because I think the police round them all up. But in the 91 movie, Nick Nolte's Sam Bowden actually goes to Max Cady and says he's going to do this. And Max, being much more a character of agency in this film, has a recorder on him and actually records him saying it. And so it's like, yeah, Nick, stop being such a idiot.
Oh, yes. So I forgot to say what happens this time. So after when he tries to get Max assaulted, my goodness, Sam finds out that Max kissed his daughter at school, and so he gets some dudes to beat him up. They do beat him up. They do beat Max up, but Max was recording the call that Sam made to threaten him to be like, "You get out of town, you bozo." I don't know the words. You know what I mean. You ruffian. And then he gets him to pretty much lose his law license. So we're back to that form of revenge. It's where it's just like, I'm going to do evil things, but because you're reacting as someone should, I'm going to punish you for it and make your life a living hell. And that's like Max's superpower.
He develops many powers over the ages, because I don't see the 57 or 62 Max having a recorder to record anything.
I feel like he just keeps being reincarnated, and Javier Bardem is his recent reincarnation.
But so it's like the De Niro's character is much more in the story than Mitchum's character was, or Max Cady in the novel. he has tons of tattoos all over his body. He's now literate. He's, a wacko, a religious wacko, but also a learned religious wacko, and actually has a reason to be pissed at his lawyer. So it's like the character of Max goes through a large transformation from 62 to 91.
I gotta say, I think that it's a really cool character introduction. Robert De Niro's introduction in that 91 movie with him doing those pull-ups in prison, and you see those tattoos. And as he's walking out of the prison cells, like everyone's just silent, like watching him with reverence. Like you don't need to know anything else. Like I really like that introduction to Max Cady on his way out of prison in that movie. That's probably my favorite Cady introduction.
And really, if people want to go back and they watch the 91 and they watch the Apple Plus show, just the characters of Max, and we'll get into this more, but Max in the Apple Plus show is again a very, very different character than the Max in the 1991.
As is
And he
different from
starts off in
62, and it is
Oh
different
yeah.
from
So
57.
so each reincarnation of Max is just he's obviously still psychotic, but it's just they add and change so many things about him that I don't know that anybody just reading The Executioners and then going straight into the Apple show would recognize almost any of the characters.
I think that's a fair way to put it. That's why I was so excited to do this exploration. Once I started, is I could just read the same story over and over, but it just really isn't. It was like, here are these pieces in play, but here's a new game board and here's new rules, and it's been great to explore.
I was reminded of when Ridley Scott got the book Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. Philip Dick was not a very well-known author at that point. He was known in certain sci-fi circles, but he wasn't the kind of cultural icon that's created, many, many movies that people love with his stories. And unfortunately, he died like right as Blade Runner was coming out. So he was thrilled it was getting made. But Ridley Scott had this ability to basically take what he wanted, leave out a lot of things, change whatever he wanted, and nobody knew. It's not like you have the love of the book from, say, the Harry Potter series or just any of these that if you try and vary too much from the book, people are going to be outraged. So I think that's given, especially I think it gave Scorsese so much room to say, this is a great story, but I can't tell it like this. It's not a great story for 1991. We got to do this and this and this. And it's not that he made so many changes from The Executioners is like not a big deal. He just, because it wasn't already, like if somebody tries to remake Star Wars and you just have, it's so iconic and people have watched it, 50 or 100 times and I think they've run into the same thing with The Wizard of Oz, trying to do remakes of that. But it's just,
what album do you think you would listen to? What is it, backwards or synced up to Cape Fear? I don't know. That sounds like a bad trip, man.
I think that well, see, the 91 being Scorsese, I know Scorsese has this love of kind of 70s soul and
I
pop
appreciate
and
your
whatnot.
consideration, man.
The kind of song that I think that the 1991 Cape Fear would be listening to backwards would be the Temptations. I Know You Want to Leave Me.
Oh my God, you guys heard it
And
here first. If any of our fans out there give this a shot and it's fire, please let us know. But I have a feeling that you're just going to bleed from the ears, but I hope you enjoy.
I know that a lot of people will go straight to heavy metal for backmasking references, but given Scorsese and given the 91 film, I really feel like that's the song that's going to be played backwards.
All right, well, I'm sure we'll circle back as we continue our exploration of Cape Fear, but we do have to take a side road here and check out one of my absolute favorite parts of this entire research process, and that is the Simpsons episode Cape Fear, 1993, written by John Vitti. Did you watch this one, Mike?
I have seen this before. I rewatched some scenes from it before this, but it's just the incorporation of the Sideshow Bob gags into the Cape Fear story.
Oh, and it's a total 91 parody. That needs to be said. This is a total
Yes.
parody of the 91 movie, not as the property as a whole. Yeah.
but no, and then of course it does deviate from Cape Fear because they're on a boat. It is going down the river, and
And they're singing.
appeals Bart appeals to Sideshow Bob's musical theater side and actually gets him to do a one-man show of, what is it, the Pirates of Penzance,
Yes.
or on the river, to basically delay until they could get to a point where other people can intervene and keep Bart from being killed. But it's just that's such a random side quest that that of course, and Kelsey Grammer does a great Sideshow Bob, and I think it's Kelsey Grammer.
It is Kelsey
Uh,
Grammer, yes. Yeah.
and just the whole show is, it's a great Simpsons episode, and it's a great parody of Cape Fear.
So the basic plot is Sideshow Bob is Max Cady. There's really no Sam Bowden. It's just Bart is the enemy. But Sideshow Bob is Max. And it opens with him in prison, and he's got all these anti-Bart tattoos. And famously, it has that scene where he's in court, and they're like, well, Bob, your shirt says, die, Bart, die. No, that's German. It says, the Bart, the. And it's very stupid, but it's very funny. And and I forgot to mention, there's this iconic shot in the 91 movie of they're driving out to Cape Fear, and Robert De Niro is hanging under the car, right? He's pressed up against the car. And in the Simpsons parody, Sideshow Bob is pressed up against the car as well. And then Homer goes, whole family's in the car, and Homer goes, anyone want to drive through this cactus patch? And the kids are like, yeah. And Bob's like, no. And Homer's like, well, that's 2-1. And he's just like screaming and being hurt. Oh man, that just about killed me.
There's also a thing with the TV show Rick and Morty, where their housekeeper, I guess it's Jerry, and the mom character, they're going
Beth.
and doing some Titanic thing, and the housekeeper has a thing for Jerry and their shared love of the movie Titanic, and so she ends up crawling under the car and doing, and I think she even says the word Cape Fear when she's like underneath the car. And
Oh, that's
so
right.
it's not a whole parody, but it's just the little throwaway bit that they'll put in a lot of the Rick and Mortys.
Another classic bit from that episode, if they didn't know it was from the Cape Fear parody, you see it memed a lot. It's where Bart's in bed and Homer like kicks in the door and he's got a chainsaw and a hockey mask. And like Bart's like scared because he thinks Sideshow Bob's going to kill him. And Homer's like, no, you just have sweet dreams and have a good night. And then he kicks in the door with a chainsaw and a hockey mask, and he's like, Bart, you gotta look at this! Ah! And he comes in with a butcher knife. You want to split up some brownies? And like, it's good stuff, man.
A lot of good gags in that Simpsons episode.
Yeah, and that's season 5, and that is peak Conan O'Brien Simpsons years. That's Homer goes to college. Like those are good times for the Simpsons for sure. So definitely check that out. Well, it is time to move on to the current belle of the ball. That is the Cape Fear show, currently on Apple. Again, we are recording so that we could put this episode out the day before the finale of the miniseries. Now, different people direct different episodes, so instead I'm just going to say the two top executive producers, which are Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, if you've ever heard of them. And then we have Javier Bardem expertly playing Max Cady. And then we have Amy Adams as Anna Bowden, Patrick Wilson as Tom Bowden. And then you also have, they have a son again. His name's Zach. And then you have the daughter Natalie instead of Nancy. In this one, Max has been away 17 years, which is the longest serving term for a Max so far. This time it's over the murder of his wife and son, so kind of escalating the stakes there a little bit as far as the time he should have been serving, apparently. Now, in this case, Anna Bowden was his defender, her name was Anna at the time. I cannot remember her last name. I apologize. Anna was his defender at the time. Bowden was his prosecutor, and then after he got put away, Anna and Tom got married and had children. So what do you want to say about the Apple show, Mike?
So much, and most of it is spoilery. But
We'll do our best here.
the
Just be
yeah,
cautious. Like if you want to go in as pure as I don't know, a sun bleached lamb, then go check it out. But we're gonna talk about it, but we'll be gentle.
no, there are a lot of recaps of every episode online. So if we mention something, if you're trying to go in fresh, you shouldn't be listening to this really much beyond this point anyway. You can listen all the way up to here, and then you're going to say, okay, I need to watch the show before I listen to any more of this podcast. But the Max Cady becomes the main character. He is. We learn so much more about him. He starts off as a restaurateur, so he's a chef who runs his own restaurant and who is then convicted of killing his wife and unborn son. And I think actually, or newborn son. I think it was newborn, but I think they shifted from rape because between 91 and 2026, especially after Me Too and all of that kind of stuff, sexual assault crimes have just they're unredeemable. If he had been convicted of that, there would be no way for that character to be redeemed. And so even though it sounds worse, I think it's easier for us to say, "Oh, he's a murderer," but that's better than if he raped her.
That's an interesting perspective, but I understand what you're saying.
But I also have to point out that Max, the way that the very beginning of the show comes out, Max's mistress, he's definitely not an angel. Max's mistress has the murder weapon and basically kills herself after admitting that she killed the wife and kid.
Yeah, so okay, that sounds like a big spoiler, but that is literally like the opening of the show. So no worries,
Yeah,
everybody.
it sounds like a spoiler, but that's how Max gets out. Is he's
Yes.
exonerated? So like
Yeah,
in
so
91,
that's
I think
the
he might still
that's
be on
the impetus
parole.
of the story is him convincing a obviously terrified woman to take her own life, and that's how we're introduced to Max. And then still, they managed to make him the most charming man on the planet through 9
Oh, they
episodes.
do.
Well, he keeps being the most evil man on the planet. I don't know how he does this dance, but he does it so well.
The family, and I'm not going to go into a lot of the details, but I know that like Amy Bowden's character has a really rough relationship with her father, who's played by the same guy that did Buffalo Bill in uh, Silence of
Oh,
the Lambs.
excellent! I didn't
I
realize that.
No, he's much older now, but it is the same actor, and he does a great job playing her dad. And so she comes out of this kind of a scarred person too, and you learn a lot about Anna and her family and the kind of person she was when she was defending Max throughout the course of the show. And you learn a little bit more about uh, Tom Bowden this time. Is it Tom? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
And
so we should say that for this one, they essentially split the character. It's not really like Sam and Carol or Sam and Peggy or Sam and Lee. It's sort of if they took Sam and then split him in half, because there's certain things that happen to Tom's character and certain things that happen to Anna's Anna's character. That is sort of an amalgamation of everything that happens between Sam and Max from certain points, but that could really only happen between. It's hard to describe without getting into the nitty gritty. But would you agree that perhaps they split the character of Sam into two, or do you
oh,
think I'm being obtuse there?
No, no, no. I definitely think they did. They took. I think they took a lot of the stuff they liked about how bad Nick Nolte's character was and put him into Tom, and then they dumped a lot of other stuff into
What an
Anna
honor to
because
Tom.
yeah, really. They dumped a lot of other stuff into Anna, so she ends up actually in some ways, and I'm not going to get into details on this, but her character actually in some ways mirrors some of the trauma because Max Cady's character, and they go, I don't think this is a spoiler, okay?
Yeah.
But Max Cady growing up, his father was a soldier in Spain and got a woman pregnant, and then left. And so Max and his mom had this kind of like normal childhood in Spain. And when she died, then he gets taken to America and dumped on his biological father's, up in Cape Fear River. And he's like this
What a
really
change!
harsh,
Can you imagine that? Ugh.
nasty. Oh, and so the Max's really, really, really bad, and it's hard to underestimate just how bad his home life was growing up. And Ron Perlman just does a really excellent, masterful job playing Max's dad.
Oh,
And
it
so
was so cool to see him again. It's always a pleasant surprise when Perlman shows up.
so you get a ton more about the horrible upbringing of Max and kind of how that shapes him into the person he is. And but they, even as late as we've watched in the episode list, you're sitting there going, man, he's horrible, he's horrible, but did he actually kill his wife and son? And one of the things that they go into, Max was abused in prison, and he actually has some brain damage, and he's hallucinating his wife and son. And I feel like, and I don't think this is a spoiler because they don't say it outright, but I get the impression from the way he's hallucinating about his wife and son that it's really in doubt as to whether he killed them or not.
Yes, and so that's another thing is it's talking about Max's assault in prison. We not only know that he suffered a vicious, vicious head wound, but that he also has the capacity to kill many times over. And that doesn't speak to the fact that he did it or not. That just means that he can do it. And he can do it under the most extreme of circumstances. So imagine if you're just sitting in your living room, is how I took that scene where they showed the extreme of the abuse he suffered in his time.
One of the other main changes that I think it was weird the way they brought it in to me. I was like, what? But if you didn't have you didn't know the 62 and 91 movies, it probably isn't weird at all. But Anna Boden works for an Innocence Project. And so her job is being the lawyer that gets people wrongly convicted.
Well, and she tries to help Max, and it's maybe kind of a bribe, but she still, she walks the walk while she talks the talk, gets him in front of a documentary crew, but it really is, in my opinion, with the intent to get him offered back, but I don't know.
But then he asks her to represent him when he's in his case against the prison.
Right.
And she goes into lawyer mode and kicks a major ass and basically facilitates. This is how Max gets his money in the 26.
Oh, yeah,
show.
That's right. And so he still wants revenge. It's not enough for him. That's it.
God,
That's
no.
the problem with him. Okay, we could keep going. We're about to get down too many
I
tunnels
don't.
there.
But just the way that the characters
You guys are
going to
watch the show. It's huge right now. It's like #1 in America. Well, I guess Silo just came out, but it's almost #1 in America. Oh, yeah, and so that's cool. It's not only do you not know if Max is guilty or not, is he plays these mind games. I mentioned that there's a much larger family we're playing with now, from both ends, from both Max's and the Bodens, but you're never entirely sure whose blood is actually anyone's blood. But they're all very good at convincing themselves and each other that everyone's related to whoever they want themselves to be. And it's all no one trusts themselves or anyone in their life. And it's all very interesting. There's a fun little puzzle that I'm hoping will be unraveled next week. And I have confidence that it will be.
And when they bring the kids into it, the younger son is troubled and makes him highly manipulatable, and so there's people manipulating him online, and he's had some inappropriate activities with some of the other schoolmates. So
yeah,
he sucks up all of that action and is very vulnerable to manipulation. And even the older daughter, that is much more on an even keel, ends up being.
She can't stop but falling for it.
Oh, yeah.
He's got that power. It's like that scene with him and Danny in the 91 movie with him and Juliette Lewis, De Niro and Juliette Lewis. It's like that, turned up to 11 with Javier Bardem and the entire family in this Apple show. He can just, get in their business.
And early on, a family of skunks ends up being...
Yes.
Pool?
There's always a dead animal, and instead of a poison dog this time, it's a random family of skunks that matches their family structure that ends up in their pool. Yes.
But the way they have the structure of Max's manipulations, he may not have even done that. It might have been one of what turns out to be his minions, which when that happens in the first episode, you don't know that he has minions yet, but it's just...
Oh, I forgot all about the Katy flies.
He may not have. I think it's an element they felt they needed to bring in, but he may not have actually done that. And I don't think he describes it because his focus is really much more on destroying their lives, destroying the children, destroying everything.
And I did want to
And
say that Anna Boden's attempt to set him up, with her foundation and the documentary crew, and get millions in a settlement as kind of like a payoff, is sort of a callback, because that's what Nick Nolte tries to do to Max, is to pay him off to go away. And this is just a different way to go about it, but it is a solution they do. It's just one of those reoccurring things.
And Nick Nolte, the Nick Nolte De Niro interaction, when he's offering him money, it's Max then does the math on how much per day you're actually paying me for my time, and it ends up being a very small amount per day, even though it's a large amount in the 91 movie. But even it's like the pain and suffering of Max in the 2026, based on the amount of money that he got. If you're not psychotic, then that's probably going to be enough.
Yeah.
But he is psychotically obsessed with the family, because that's who Max Cady is. Psychotically obsessed with either the original lawyer who did him wrong by getting him thrown in jail, or the lawyer who did him wrong by not bringing out evidence that might, if not have exonerated him, possibly lessened his sentence. And now, Max is really focused on the lawyers that sent him away and then got together and had kids, and just the life they built on his ashes.
Excellently said. Now, I want to quickly focus on 3 characters from this series, and we're going to end with Max because he's just the most interesting. It is what it is. But as far as our comparisons to, if we talk about Sam Bowden being split into 2 people, we have Tom and Anna. I want to talk about how Tom is similar by bringing up something I haven't yet about him. That's the fact that he was creeping up on an affair. He hadn't had one yet, which might have been the case with Nick Nolte's character. Like you said, I thought they'd slept together. You said they were getting close. Either way, that's happening with Tom and his assistant. But Tom in this one has a microdosing habit. He keeps drugs around publicly, which are used. Anyway, I don't need to spoil anything. There's a great drug episode. And with Anna, I'm not sure. I kind of want to know your opinion, diving a little deeper on how Tom and Anna are split into this character Sam and how they utilize that.
Well, they both have a lot more trauma, but different trauma, than the Sam Bowdens of the previous shows. The way that it comes out, Anna's trauma and Max Cady's trauma match a lot more closely. And it creates a connection between their characters that I think is used to good effect, especially with the youth and in the later episodes that we're trying not to spoil. But that kind of shared trauma bond that they have way, way, way back before even Max's wife's body is discovered, is because she's representing him when he's just under suspicion. I think that creates a bond between them that Anna Bowden hates, and Max then knows how to use to manipulate. But Tom, he has a different trauma that turns him, and he is ex-military, and I get the feeling he's done a lot more combat-oriented military than the Sam Bowdens in the past. But he he has multiple weapons around the house. He does a lot of just massive exercising. And yeah, I get the impression he had a previous affair, and that he's getting too close to his associate attorney, but trying. I think he's trying harder than Nick Nolte's character to not have an affair.
Well, fair, but affair enough. I couldn't resist. That was so stupid.
Yeah.
But
they are definitely traumatized characters going into this.
You put up with me so well. Yeah, there's so much more I want to say, but anything else I say is just going to spoil things. So let's move to some loose speculation. I do not want to say where the Bowdens are right now, because we are 9 out of 10 episodes into this. If you listen to this the day it drops tomorrow, you're going to see the end of the whole thing. But I have a feeling that Max is going to win. What do you think?
They've set it up so that not everyone is going to survive. I think that's
fair.
They mention,
I'm a little worried about Zach, but I don't know.
I'm worried about everybody who's not Anna. I think Anna's going to
I think
survive the
Anna
whole
might just
thing.
stick around and see everyone. Okay, I see what you mean. I see.
But especially after the ninth episode, they're really setting it up so that there's a big confrontation. I think the big confrontation is definitely going to be Anna and Max. No, I mean even though the other characters there, I think that when it comes to the final confrontation, it's going to be those two. And yes, I feel like that's going to be the episode 10 called The Executioners after the
I
1957
was
novel.
hoping you noticed that. I was going to bring it up if you hadn't seen that.
But I feel like that conflict, that finale conflict is going to be the big one. And I feel like a lot of things, I mean the family, no matter who lives and who dies, who survives, the family's going to be just like they're going to all be in therapy for decades over this. That's what they need to do. And but it's the Tom is going through a lot right
Tom
now,
is going through a
and
lot right now. I think that is the best way to put it without spoiling anything.
and the both of their kids are going through a lot. But I can actually see some conflict involving the youth in a way that I can't talk about too much because of spoiling, but I can see where if you pay attention to the relationship of the kids and how that flows into what's building up, and I do think it's going to take place on Cape Fear River, and that houseboat. There's a houseboat in this show, and so there's
Yes,
just a lot of
yes,
the
there is a
a lot of the
houseboat in the
classic
show. I meant
elements.
thank you for reminding me. I would have felt like such a fool if I didn't bring that up.
So a lot of the classic elements of we're building toward the Cape Fear finale are there and ready to use, and but
Do
yeah,
you think they're going to
it's
sing Pirates of Penzance?
I would probably think their younger son would be the closest we could get to Pirates of Penzance. He might break into it, yeah, but
Let me ask you real quick. We were talking about the kids as we wrap this up. So in the book, let's just say around 70 years ago, they had the troublesome son Bucky, who seemed like he was a burgeoning serial killer out of nowhere. And now we got this creepo Zach 70 years later in 2026. Can you think of a reason why the Bowdens are strapped with a problematic, violent son every now and then?
well, Zach, I think, is actually much more the inheritor of all of Juliette Lewis's character from the 1991 film. The troubled youth that is more easily manipulated by Max and Max's machinations.
That's a good
And the
point.
way they do it in the 2026 show is very modern. Uh, and so he gets to suck into all of that. And but then they added in the daughter back, but then they have such a different take because of the way they've dealt with the Bowdens, splitting it up between Tom and Anna, and having both Tom and Anna having these troubled pasts. It's like Zach is Tom and Anna's child, and Natalie is the child she brought into the marriage, and she was, I guess, pregnant with Natalie during the trial.
Right. And
And
yeah.
and this isn't spoiler. This part isn't spoiler at all. But it's like the way they've brought Natalie in is so different than the way the daughter is in the 57 or the 62 movie. And if you take most of the daughter's troubles from 91 movie and throw those onto Zach, well, then you've got this blank slate of, you know, soap opera suspense goodness in the character of Natalie. And not to spoil anything, but they take full effect. They use her as a piece of the story for good effect all the way through. And so I feel like the different story arcs for Natalie and Zach could lead them into very different ends by the end of the show.
All I can say is that you guys should check this out. Man, I want to talk about so much more. There's only so much I can spoil though. I can't wait to see how it ends coming up in 35 more years. We'll get to see more.
Well, this is an idea that I had after the 10th episode. If we can get together again for maybe 10 to 15, 20 minutes and do an appendix,
Yeah, I'd like that.
then
I'd like that.
then and I would definitely say in the appendix that this is a full spoiler warning appendix. You can't, because I don't think we can talk about the finale without
No, I
spoiling
like it. It's like an after dark for it. I like it. Is there anything you wanted to say as your final thoughts on Cape Fear as we're wrapping up here? Feel like this has been a long time coming.
I feel like if all you're going to do is watch the 2026 miniseries, you're going to get a great story. You're going to binge watch it. You're going to be totally satisfied. But if you can go back and go further back than 1991, watch that 62 movie.
I can't tell you how much I've taken out of it going back farther and seeing how much it's evolved watching the new series.
Read that 57 novel, and you can just see how our society and its interpretation of Cape Fear over time has changed. I think that it's just a much deeper understanding of not just the story, but our society in general.
Absolutely well said. Well, now is our time to plug the Halloween Horror Hour. Guys, you've gotten a couple Patreon episodes the last couple weeks because we have been in Seattle filming for the show. It airs in October. I play the character of Discount Dracula. Mike, tell them who you play.
I play Van Vidal, the really angry newscaster guy, and people ask me, why Van Vidal? And it's like Ian and Michael Ronley, the other producer and DP, I didn't actually name the character when I did the first little bit, and so between Van Helsing and if you've ever watched the movie Wreck, which is a Spanish film, the main character in that film is, I think, like Angela Vidal. And so they portmanteaued them together, and I am Van Vidal. And every year so far, I've done something angry and then been killed. And this year is
oh,
not
guys,
going to disappoint you.
Oh, he came into the studio holding a prop of his own severed head. You guys are going to love it. It's a good time.
And so you have to, if you watch the show, you'll have to figure out what classic horror film are we paying homage to with My Demise this year. And and I've tried to, and I did a lot of work with George as Discount Dracula.
In season 4 we're in a lot of scenes together. You're gonna like them. They're pretty silly. Do you have a favorite one? I have a favorite one.
My favorite Van Vidal piece so far of all of them that I've done is really the season 3 when basically Van Vidal defeats the alternative hippie Van in a way that I'm not going to describe right now. But that's my favorite scene and favorite homage of all of them. But of the ones that we were doing this time, I really liked the scooter.
I was gonna say my favorite. It doesn't matter what I did. I've got a lot of fun scenes as Discount this year. My favorite was definitely you in the scooter, calling me a ruffian, and then driving away and punching me in the gut with a psychic mushroom. You can't beat that. Yeah. Well, either way, thanks for joining me here today. Thank you all for listening to the Halloween Horror Pod. Go check out that Cape Fear. It is a fun property. Mike, thanks again for joining me today.
All right. Well, it's always a pleasure. Love being on the podcast. Love being affiliated with the Halloween Horror Hour. And just, I hope everyone is enjoying everything we put out for them.
Excellent. Well, have a great day out there, and we'll see you next week.